intelligence agencies believe the Russians are behind that leak. Why don't you believe it?
I don't know if they're behind it, and I think it's public relations, frankly. You know what does bother me? I have nothing to do with
But you were
Russia.
even told
George,
that by the
George, let me
Republican
explain
head of the
something.
Homeland Security
Let me
Committee, Mike
explain
McCall.
something.
He said the same thing.
I don't know what he said.
He told you that he thought the Russians were behind
Hacking
it.
is very interesting. Hacking is very hard to determine who did what, okay? You know that. People are hacking all over the place. Nobody knows. They don't know if it's Russia. They can't guarantee it's Russia. And it may be. I mean, it may be Russia. I have nothing to do with Russia. She likes to put the narrative about Donald Trump with Russia. I have nothing to do with Russia. I don't know money. I don't have deals in Russia. I don't know Putin.
But why not accept our intelligence agency's conclusion?
Well, I haven't seen the conclusion. But you know what? Hacking, I understand. And you really, it's very hard to determine who's doing the hacking. There's no collusion between me and my campaign and the Russians. The other thing is the Russians did not affect the vote, and everybody seems to think that. Look, I want to find out if there was a problem with an election having to do with Russia, or by the way, anybody else, any other country. And I want that to be so strong and so good. And I think I want it to have that. We have to get back to work, but I want to find out, I want to get to the bottom. If Russia hacked, if Russia did anything having to do with our election, I want to know about it.
Well, there's already intelligence from virtually every intelligence agency that, yes, that happened.
I'll tell you this, if Russia or anybody else is trying to interfere with our elections, I think it's a horrible thing, and I want to get to the bottom of it, and I want to make sure it will never, ever happen.
An embattled President Trump is fighting back, tweeting this morning, "This is the single greatest witch hunt of a politician in American history." His tweet follows the stunning appointment of former FBI Director Robert Mueller as special counsel in the Russian Trump investigation.
I respect the move, but the entire thing has been a witch hunt, and there is no collusion between certainly myself and my campaign, but I can always speak for myself and the Russians. Zero.
Senator, the president says this is just a witch hunt.
Well, I don't think that's appropriate. I would advise him to stop. The process is going to go forward.
And Pamela, a source telling CNN that the president is still fuming today about the raids on Cohen's office, home, and hotel, and that this is almost a new level of anger that people at the White House haven't seen from him.
Yeah, that's right. Jake, sources familiar say that the president's anger over these raids has really reached a boiling point, that his anger has even surpassed previous outrage he has had over the Mueller investigation. Some aides even saying this is a turning point for President Trump.
In the days since the raid on Michael Cohen's office and hotel room, we've learned the FBI wasn't just looking for records about payments to porn star Stormy Daniels, but also documents on a deal between former Playboy playmate Karen McDougal and the owners of the National Enquirer to buy and bury her story about her alleged affair with Trump, an affair the White House denies.
The president's been clear. He's addressed this several times. I don't have anything else to add.
We've also learned the raid included a request for documents related to Cohen's ownership of New York City taxi medallions. Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, who was nominated by Trump, had to sign
So I
off
just
on
heard that they broke into the office of one of my personal attorneys, good man, and it's a disgraceful situation. It's a total witch hunt. I've been saying it for a long time. I've wanted to keep it down. We've given, I believe, over 1 million pages worth of documents to the special counsel. They continue to just go forward, and here we are talking about Syria. We're talking about a lot of serious things with the greatest fighting force ever. And I have this witch hunt constantly going on for over 12 months now, and actually much more than that. You could say it was right after I won the nomination it started.
Mr.
And
President,
it's a disgrace.
yesterday, FBI agents, at the direction of the U.S. Attorney of the Southern District of New York, seized information from President Trump's personal attorney, Michael Cohen. It was reported that the referral to the U.S. Attorney's Office originated with Special Counsel Mueller, but the raid itself was under the direction of the U.S. Attorney's Office and New York FBI agents. We don't know the reason for Special Counsel Mueller's referral. We do know that any referral must have been signed off by Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. Furthermore, the U.S. Attorney's Office in New York would have to be convinced that whatever information Mr. Mueller passed along was worth pursuing. And the U.S. Attorney would have to convince an independent magistrate judge, nonpartisan, that there was probable cause to believe that seizing information from Mr. Cohen would yield evidence of a crime.
Also again publicly turning on his Attorney General Jeff Sessions, who has the power to fire Special Counsel Robert Mueller, but recuse himself from the Russia investigation.
The Attorney General made a terrible mistake when he did this and when he recused himself, or he should have certainly let us know if he was going to recuse himself, and we would have put a different Attorney General in.
And firing a warning shot to Mueller himself.
Why don't I just fire Mueller? Well, I think it's a disgrace what's going on. We'll see what happens, but I think it's really a sad situation when you look at what happened. And many people have said you should fire.
The President suggests that the latest events are part of a partisan conspiracy against him. I'd remind the President that the source of the referral, Special Counsel Mueller, is a lifelong Republican. The Deputy Attorney General who signed off on the referral, Rod Rosenstein, is a Republican, appointed by President Trump. The Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, a Republican, appointed by President Trump. And the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District in New York, which sought a search warrant based on that information, is a Republican, appointed by President Trump. The agents in New York who carried out the seizure are under the direction of Christopher Wray, a Republican, appointed by President Trump. So if President Trump believes this to be a partisan conspiracy, he once again ignores the fact that every major player is a Republican, and all but the judges appointed by President Trump himself. I go through these details because it's important to understand that yesterday's events could only have been the result of a rigorous legal process with checks every step of the way and with a very high burden of proof. And yet, last night, President Trump said the FBI raid was a disgrace, part of a witch hunt, an attack on our country, and mentioned that many people have encouraged him to fire Mr. Mueller.
Trump wouldn't answer questions today, instead taking to Twitter to declare attorney-client privilege is dead and to call the investigation, led by his own Justice Department, a witch hunt.
It's a disgrace. It's frankly a real disgrace. It's an attack on our country in a true sense. It's an attack on what we all
President Trump also said that the implication of his personal attorney for potentially serious federal crimes constitutes an attack on our country. That's what he said, an attack on our country. With due respect, President Trump, America has been around for over 2.5 centuries.
They only keep looking at us. So they find no collusion, and then they go from there and they say, well, let's keep going. And they raid an office of a personal attorney early in the morning. And I think it's a disgrace.
An investigation of your personal attorney is not an attack on our country. The Japanese bombing Pearl Harbor was an attack on our country. 9/11 was an attack on our country. When Russia interfered with our elections, that was an attack on our country. Investigating your personal lawyer with a high standard to be met is certainly not an attack.
I have this witch hunt constantly going on for over 12 months now, and actually much more than that. You could say it was right after I won the nomination it started. And it's a disgrace. It's frankly a real disgrace. It's an attack on our country in a true sense. It's an attack on what we all stand for.
President Trump said the raid was a disgrace. I say to the President, Mr. President, you have it wrong. Interfering with the investigation would be a disgrace. Calling it attack on our country is a disgrace. What matters is the rule of law. In this country, no man is above the law, not even the President. Mr. President, your comments were the
We'll be talking about it more, but this is the most conflicted group of people I've ever seen. The Attorney General made a terrible mistake when he did this and when he recused himself, or he should have certainly let us know if he was going to recuse himself, and we would have put a different Attorney General in. So he made what I consider to be a very terrible mistake for the country. But you'll figure that out. Well, I think it's a disgrace what's going on. We'll see what happens, but I think it's really a sad situation when you look at what happened. And many people have said you should fire him.
If the President is thinking of using this raid to fire Special Counsel Mueller or otherwise interfere with the chain of command in the Russia probe, we have one simple message for him.
So we'll see what happens. I think it's disgraceful, and so does a lot of other people. This is a pure and simple witch hunt.
Special Counsel Mueller has uncovered a deep and detailed pattern of Russian interference in our elections. It has led to several indictments and guilty pleas. It has also led the Trump administration itself to level sanctions against Russian individuals for meddling in our elections. That is proof positive that Mueller's investigation is not a so-called witch hunt. If the President's own administration has leveled sanctions against Russian individuals for meddling in our elections, how can the President say it's a witch hunt?
So this has been going on. I saw one of the reporters who is not necessarily a fan of mine, not necessarily very good to me. He said, in effect, that this is ridiculous. This is now getting ridiculous. They found no collusion whatsoever with Russia. The reason they found it is there was no collusion at all. No collusion. This is the most biased group of people. These people have the biggest conflicts of interest
The President seems to have a view that the Department of Justice's sole purpose is to protect the President and go after his enemies. I emphatically state to the President, that is not the role of the Department of Justice. Their role is to enforce the law and go after anyone who breaks it. That's their role. And it is not subject to the President's political interests in any way.
All I can say is, after looking for a long period of time, not even before the special counsel, because it really started just about from the time I won the nomination. And you look at what took place and what happened, and it's a disgrace. So when I saw this and when I heard it like you did, I said, that is really now in a whole new level of unfairness.
Special Counsel Mueller, the FBI, federal prosecutors, and U.S. attorneys are following the due process of our legal system. Calling that an attack on our country undermines the rule of law, the bedrock principle of this great nation for centuries, the reason, above all, that the rest of the world looks up to these great United States of America.
An attack on our country in a true sense. It's an attack on what we
The
all
only
stand
person
for.
engaging in an attack on American values, what we all stand for, the rule of law, is unfortunately President Trump. It is what America has always been about and still is, rule of law.